Okay. So we're going to go ahead and call to order the notice of the public meeting and of the Budget and Finance Committee meeting today. So first we're going to start off and call to order.
Dr. Sanders?
Yes.
Dr. Moore?
Yep.
Ms. Bethea?
Here.
And Ms. Trophy's excused. You have a quorum.
Okay. We've established a quorum. So next on the item is public comment. The public comment period is limited to matters specifically noticed on the agenda. No action may be taken upon the matter raised during public comment unless the matter itself has been specifically included on the agenda as an action item. Comments by the public may be limited to 3 minutes as a reasonable time, place, and manner restriction, but may not be limited based upon viewpoint. The chairperson may allow additional time at his or her discretion. Item 3, approve agenda.
Is there any
Is there any public comment? Sorry. Nobody's up north.
Is there anybody on the phone other than Dr. Moore?
Dr. Moore? Okay.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to go to item number 3, to approve agenda and disclosure. To approve the agenda, and are there any disclosures by any board members? Okay.
Do you have a motion to approve?
Move to approve the agenda.
Motion has.
Approve the agenda.
Can you say that a little louder, Dr. Moore?
I can second the approval for the agenda.
Okay. Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Any disclosures by any board members? All right. Item number 4, review, discussion, and make recommendations to the board regarding fiscal year 20 draft proposed budget, NRS 631.190.
Okay, so this is a proposed budget. So, and this year's budget is a little bit more detailed. And so when you look at the reports that were sent over to you, you'll see a lot more in the memos on individual line items. But let's just start from the beginning here with the proposed income for the year. I went ahead and went back over the past 4 years to capture the averages. And so the proposal for the licensees, the dentist at a 7% increase, and for the hygienist is a 5% increase. And so those are, again, based on the averages over the past 4 years. And the other licenses and fees, we have had some of them come in at a little bit lower percentage in the previous years and in last year. So I did go ahead and reduce our projected income from other licenses and fees by 11%. So those are the only areas for income for the board is in those licenses and miscellaneous. Does anybody have any questions regarding the projected income, proposed income?
No.
No.
Okay. And so moving down into our proposed expenses, we have the very first line item is CE class expenses. Staff is proposing a 3 free CE course for licensees for this fiscal year, and the cost of that being approximately $30,000. It can come in a little bit higher or lower, but we definitely will be sure that we're keeping within the proposed budget.
I'm sorry, I'm not really understanding, what is the CE class expense? For what's the class?
That would be a class that the board would put on, a free CE class for licensees that the board would put on.
Okay. Have we done that before?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Okay.
Okay. Moving down.
And in the past, it was $1,800, then we're discussing that we may want to allow up to $30,000 for a free CE class.
Dr. Moore, yes, so we're allotting for, or budgeting for $30,000 so that we can put on a free CE course for the dentists and the dental hygienists. So in order to accommodate, obviously we can't have it here at the board office, so we'll probably have to find a venue that would hold enough people. And we might have to do one down here, one up north, so that's why we've allotted for $30,000 or budgeted for $30,000, because we're not exactly sure what the cost is going to be. I comfortably believe we could be able to do it for $30,000. It's just the method in which how we're going to do it.
And are we looking at a specific type of class, or are we looking at like some of the CE that we have to have for our licenses are required? Are we looking at maybe providing what are the details of the class, or are we going to set up a committee to discuss that?
You can refer to the Continuing Education Committee. That would be fine. I think we will hit the key continuing education as far as what I foresee it being is like maybe 4 different subjects. Maybe the controlled substance that's required for the dentists who hold valid controlled substance permits. There might be infection control, because obviously everyone that affects every licensee. There might be jurisprudence, there might be record keeping, whatever. And I'm looking at about two-hour courses, but it would be, you would get credit for 8 hours if you attend all 4 components.
I guess that sounds great. I was just wondering who's in charge of this, making those decisions?
Well, yeah, it's usually the Continuing Education Committee would.
They would make recommendations to the board.
Right. So for instance, if you attended a course that you thought the course would be beneficial to the licensees, maybe you took it in another state, if you wanted us to contact that provider or that instructor to see if they would be willing to do that for us, then that's something that the committee could organize.
Great. I was just curious about how close. Now, if we're like I said, we have a committee and they're going to make a recommendation to the board, so the board can better oversee all the stuff that we do. That was all.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on, we have some pretty standard expenses with our merchant fees, which are lower when we have the hygienist renewal year. We have our conferences and seminars, which we have increased the budgeting on that a little bit this year. That's $8,000. That is to take into account not just the AADB, and fortunately one of those meetings is here in Las Vegas this year. But we also have usually somebody at an OSAP meeting, and then there's also a FARG meeting that Deb can explain it a little bit more to you for staff. And we have some meetings that come up here and there, so I budgeted an additional $500 in there just to, so if somebody wanted to be able to go to some other additional meetings throughout the year, then we have the ability, we have the budget for it already in place. Are there any questions on that line item? Okay, dues and subscriptions.
I do. I'm sorry, I do. We discussed this a little bit at our last board meeting about how the board is going to decide who goes. But then I got a email from Angelica discussing that potentially that any board member that wanted to attend the meetings could go. So how are we progressing on that?
So every board member is eligible to go to the AADB. So the AADB runs their renewal period in a sense the same time that we run ours. So it begins July 1st and ends June 30th. So all the members are eligible to go to any of the AADB meetings that will be from July to June of next year, which currently the one is here in Las Vegas, October, I believe it's 18th through the 20th or 19th to the 21st. And then the next one will be it's held in the spring, and it's always in Chicago. And that one, all the board members who want to attend would be eligible to attend.
Okay. So the committee that we have right now, the finance committee, are we the ones that are supposed to try to figure out the budget for what if you have 3 members that want to go or 4 members that want to go? Where's the discussion on who's going to pay for, because we have budgeted 3 board, 2 staff, 2 times a year.
Okay, so let me explain a little bit on this budget, because the budget is actually based on 2 meetings that are in Chicago. When I originally put the budget together, I didn't realize that the one meeting was here in Las Vegas. So we've actually built in enough of a budget for more than 3 board members to go to Chicago if they chose to do that in the spring.
I've never been to one of the conferences. Obviously, I'm new to the board and new to the organization. I do find that as a new board member, that I'm having to learn a lot, on the fly and on my own. And so my question is that if this is a valuable entity for board members, and it seems like we should push to have our board members go, whether it's fully paid for or not, but I mean, we should encourage it, at least, for everyone to attend it if they're a valuable resource out together.
Correct. So what we did is we budgeted. So we've already paid the dues for the board and every board member to attend. And then when we budgeted enough that goes beyond the 3 board members and 2 staff members. And the board pays the board pays the cost for everything for you to travel there. There's no cost to you as the board. That's what we've done. We've budgeted for you. So we know roughly what the registration fee is and what the hotel fees are. Because we've done this, we already, and they send us the information, we've already budgeted with the idea in mind that it'll be more than 3. And so that there's enough money here for whoever wants to attend this meeting can attend.
And the purpose of today is just to make sure that the money for that is set aside in the budget for you to either recommend that the board adopt or not. The purpose of today is not to determine who's going to go or if it's prudent to go or anything like that. It's just to make sure that we have the money, if you choose to make that recommendation, set aside in the budget allotted for that.
And there may be times we go over the budget, there's times we go we come in under budget, but we just try to do the best we can to forecast what the costs will be, and we try to come as close to the budget as we can.
Right, I completely understand that. I just don't want it misread or misunderstood that we're only trying to provide spaces for 3 of the board members to go. Otherwise, it doesn't like it's what the thing to spend or spend money on.
Right, exactly.
That's just a memo that,
Important thing, yeah.
the memo's just for explanation purposes. It's not actually controlling over the budget.
I'd like for future reference, when we're doing things like this, to make it more specific if you're going to put notes in there, so that it's reflective of what you actually mean rather than what it was
Okay.
in the past.
We have an average number of board members that have gone to this every year also, and it's generally not every board member that's going to attend.
Right. But anybody who wants to attend can attend.
So, I mean, can we
Historically, historically in the past, just so you have an understanding, in the past, the board used to pay for all, so the board has a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that you maximize the resources. So years past, we would pay for all the board members, we'd pay the registration fee, and we would pay the membership fee for each board member, which is $450, I believe now, it's increased. So in the past, not all the board members went. So we're paying a membership fee for a board member who had no intention of going during that July period to June period. So several years ago, probably about 5 years ago, we started approving certain board members who were committing to go. So that once they said, yes, I want to attend these meetings, the board would pay for their membership, and then they would go to the meeting, and then they would come back and report to the other board members who didn't attend. And it was a way to reduce paying a membership fee for a board member who knows that he can't attend during that time frame. He might, that he doesn't want to make that commitment. It's your decision, you're the board. So the last conversation was you wanted it open up to all board members. So now we've paid that membership fee for all board members, but I can't say that all board members are going to attend those meetings. Then when this comes up, whoever wants to go, the board would approve them to go. It was just a way, because all the board members, we were paying for them, but half of them weren't going. So we were wasting those resources. So.
When I looked on the website to sign up for the course, you can pay the fee when you sign up. So
As a non-member. Okay, you're talking about the registration fee. I'm talking about the membership fee. So when you want to be a member of the AADB, and that's for board members, public member, attorney, executive director, so they send you an invoice at the beginning of the year, and they want to know, out of your board, so we have the agency pays a fee, and then you have all the members paying a fee. So in the past, like I said, we used to pay for everybody, but not everybody was going. And so we thought, well, why are we paying $450 times 6 or 7 board members that had no intention of going? So to maximize the resources for the board, that's when we did. The registration fee is the fee that the board has to pay for you to go to the meeting. So you have a membership fee and a registration fee.
okay.
I'm talking about the membership fee.
Again, I understand that. So are you saying that this is different than all other associations, like like right now, if I wanted to go to a meeting that I'm not a member of, I can choose to pay that membership fee when I sign up. And I can sign up as, I can pay my membership fee and I can pay for the conference fee all at the same time. I don't have to pay, I can be a member if it's an association that I want to be a member of, and I can have that membership all year. But it's like, exactly like what you said, it doesn't do any good if I'm not going to go to the meeting. It doesn't save me that thing. In fact, sometimes it's cheaper to be a non-member and just go to the meeting, especially if it's a local meeting, than it is to pay the membership fee and then pay for the conference. So perhaps we need to, instead of, like you said, instead of paying for everybody in membership, when some people may have no interest in going, maybe we need to relook at how we're and when we're paying for those fees so that we are fiduciarily that more responsible.
Right, right. So originally, I was not a member of the AADB originally. I was doing exactly what you did. The problem is, when you get there, if they don't have you as a member, you can't vote on any of the matters. So to make sure that Nevada is represented when voting on matters that may affect the citizens and the licensees in the state, I think that it's very important that you have your vote there. And if you don't, if it's all how it hits, so yes, we can do it exactly the way you said, but you run the risk of not being able to be a voting member when it comes to the annual meeting. So it doesn't matter to me which way you want to do it. You can tell me however you want to do it.
My suggestion would be that we get a commitment from those who are interested in going, and you can pay their membership fee so that you're not wasting money, and then we can plan on those people going to the meeting. Some people make it gone and don't already, they don't benefit going twice.
And I totally agree with you, Dr. Moore. That's why that was on that agenda item the last time. And I asked who would be interested in attending those meetings for that period, because that's exactly what I did. And then you made a statement, I believe, to say that you didn't want it just anybody and that it wouldn't be fair. And so you had recommended all of the members be. So that's exactly what I tried to do in advance, knowing the meeting's coming up, is to see what board member during this period would like to attend these meetings. That person would be approved.
Well, I apologize.
Okay, I understand. I understand you're new, but that's what I tried to do.
And I appreciate it totally. I'm sorry I didn't make myself clear. Firstly, for the record, if this is an important agenda for us to budget for, then it seems like members should be able to go, whichever members those are, whichever board members those are. Like for me, it seems like it's a no-brainer. I've never been, I'm part of the board, I should go. It should be beneficial for me, that's what I'm assuming.
Correct. And usually they rotate, so, right.
I'm sorry?
Sometimes they'll rotate, like whoever was this year, they'll go, okay, next year I don't want to be, I've already gone, I've gotten the experience, and then a next group will go and report back to the board.
Right.
So I totally agree.
All of our
So-
other, and the way all of our other associations work is that if you want to be a member, you have to pay a member fee. But you don't have to pay that member fee at any particular, you can join any time during the year. It doesn't have to be a specific point in time. If you're going to attend a meeting as a member, you have to pay for your membership fee before you go.
That's correct, Dr. Moore, but what you're doing today at this meeting is approving a budget that's going to last for a year. And yes, during the year, if changes to that budget need to be made, they can be made. But what you're doing today is trying to the best of your ability, forecast what expenses this board will have over the next fiscal year. And so that's what you're doing. We're not making any commitments as to any particular association today. We're simply, not we, are simply reviewing the forecasted budget of what expenses the board may or may not have.
I'm pretty clear on that. I'm pretty clear that that's what we're doing today.
Okay,
And I'm also pretty clear that the more specific that we are of why we're going to allocate funds for a particular extent, it needs to be specified as much as we can. Otherwise, we may not get what we're really looking for, correct?
correct, but this expense, this line item is an expense for conferences and seminars. So that's what the line item expense is. The memo is a further clarification of what that might include, but the line item expense
I'm a
is,
member of I get that. I totally get that. I'm just saying that they would answer that as good as you can, that you tried, and I'm fine with that.
okay.
You're the ones that brought up the specific AATD. I didn't bring that up this time. Well, I got started on that. I just want it clear that if the board feels like a conference or seminar needs to be attended, that we have a budget and that it doesn't show favoritism, that only 3 members and 2 staff people can go, which is exactly what the line item says.
So if you would like to ask Stacy to amend that memo for the budget that's going to be presented to the full board, you can ask her to do that.
Your line item should reflect what you mean, what the board means, not other entities. So it should read that for to attend, if you want to have something there, to specifically to attend whatever these meetings are, ABC, OSAP, etc. I just don't want it to reflect that it looks like we're playing any kind of favoritism or that only one person is going to go. If they're important items, then you need to bring that to the board and say, hey, board, here's the meetings that are going on. You know, who is interested in going, why it's important, etc. That's it.
Okay, so just remove, I would just make what the conferences are. So these are the forecasted conferences, the AADB, OSAP, FARB, and then just remove the number of people attending.
Okay, well, keep in mind, though, with the budget, that means however many you want to attend, those expenses need to fit inside this budget. So there may still be a limit on the number who can attend.
Well, perhaps you should educate me, I guess, because I'm the only one that doesn't know what the purpose of the meetings are, why they're important. And if the rest of the board members know that, I don't know. Maybe somebody else would like to go. Maybe there will only be 2 people that would want to go. I have no idea, folks.
Well, what I can do is I'll attach to this, like what OSAP is, what FARB is. I'll give a brief detail when this budget goes before the board at the next meeting, so they know what all of these meetings entail. Like a rough summary of what these meetings, how beneficial they are to the board members and why.
Perfect.
Okay, I can do that.
Thank you.
Okay, Stacy?
Moving on, dues and subscriptions. We do have the AADB dues, which are dues for each board member as well as the board itself. We have AADA. We also have some software that we pay subscriptions for, which is utilized by staff. We have an OSAP membership, and I have DocuShare with a question mark because we were having a little bit of trouble with getting the information for that software. And so what we did find is that that is actually ending up to be part of a furniture and equipment budget. So we're going to cross the DocuShare with the question marks off of there because it ended up not being part of that line item.
And just so you know, DocuShare is the software system when we scan licensees' applications and all their information into the software. DocuShare is the software we use.
Okay, and then we also have the jurisprudence exam that we do, renew every year, and then we have some Microsoft software that we will have to update on the computers, but also that software now comes with a monthly fee attached to it per user, which we didn't have to do in the past, but because of technology moving forward, we now are going to have that as a regular fixed expense on a monthly basis.
And that's per the state. The state is requiring all boards and commissions and agencies to do that.
Okay, and that's also one of the reasons why there's an increase in that line item, is to compensate for those additional monthly charges. Under furniture and equipment, so this is where,
Sorry, quick question on that. On your, on your Adobe, what service are we using to Adobe?
So if we get if we have a PDF, we've scanned something in, or we want to make a notation, so we have to pay $600 to convert documents in Adobe, or if we need to redact information. So somebody does a public records request and wants somebody's application. There's personal information on there. So because those applications are scanned, we have to go into Adobe to, retract or redact any of that information. So it's the software we use to do those things.
It's a yearly fee,
it's a month
Monthly fee
a month fee?
per user.
per user. So right now, we all share one user to minimize the cost. But yes.
And then your Microsoft update, that's coming because of, essentially, because we're going to get some new computers and other items.
Actually, yes. Well, there's an upgrade that all of the boards and commissions and state agencies had to do because the state we're on Outlook, and so the state updated their Outlook. But if we don't update our Microsoft to match, we're having difficulty getting our emails. So they're requiring all the boards and commissions and state agencies to do this upgrade to Microsoft, and that's why we have to pay for the upgrade, and we also have to pay a monthly fee per employee to the state to maintain that. So that is a new cost to us.
Thank you.
Okay.
The next line item, furniture and equipment, this has to do with the move to new offices, and staff has gone through and obtained quotes on all of these items in order to develop a budget for all of the furniture and equipment. There are some upgrades, and I think Deb can probably explain to you a little bit more about this if you have questions. Being moved, we're doing our best to project what that is going to cost. There's sometimes some variables, and but this is, it's a much larger space, and so we do have, we are going to be looking at additional staffing, and so we're going to have to increase the amount of furniture we have, the cabinets, the conference rooms, the 2 conference rooms that have to be furnished. And if you want any particulars on that, then Deb can give you more information on that line item. Okay, some of the other items below that are pretty much fixed. They increase a nominal amount every year, which is our insurance. Our workers' comp is based upon our percentage of wages. So there's no really projecting those items out because they're fixed cost. And so if you go down to computer repair upgrade, this also has to do with part of what we just talked about under dues and subscriptions, the Windows software upgrade, and adding additional, some computers, some of the computers here are pretty old, and they're a little bit too old to update. And so we do have to bring in some new computers with additional staffing. We also have to provide them with computers, printers, scanners. We have installation costs that are involved in that as well. The note on the DocuShare software, we're going to cross that off just because we're, again, having a little bit of difficulty with getting that information in here and whether or not that particular software is going to be the one that we end up moving over to. Are there any questions on that? Computer repair upgrade?
Are we, when you decide, when we decide to do this, will vendors place a bid and then will the finance committee look at what's been bid and by whom?
We actually have to use who the state contracts with. So the state contracts with Adele. So so the state's already done that. So when it comes to equipment like this, the state has already gone out and got bids, and then they elect to enter into a contract. So the computers, who we purchase them through, is whoever the state is contracting with at that time.
And then does that also provide software and hardware support for us when things break down or don't work?
Correct. So then, so we have, the state assists us with our emails and things like that. So the state contracts with a computer vendor. That's who we use. So if we have an issue, we contact the state help desk. We let them know what the issue is. They get a hold of our computer gentleman, and then he comes in and assesses whatever the issue is.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, going on to the next page, moving expenses. This is just the moving company, and what I mean by incidentals, these are boxes, tape, whatever, to package everything up and prep it for the moving company to go ahead and take care of that. Increase in office supplies is increase in staff, so some of these things are increased based upon the additional staffing we're projecting. The janitorial, because of the larger space, we're going to be paying an additional amount every month for that. Let me see. Sorry.
Copier minutes?
Yeah, because of increase in staff, obviously, we're going to have an increase in the use of the copiers, which, we pay for our copier maintenance on a per copy basis. So that's going to be moving up. Security, we have projected out additional security. The alarm system is going to be a little bit higher. We are also going to have to put in some new equipment. And it does include security service at board meetings and hearings as well. The shredding services is, close to the same. It's a little bit of an increase. Utilities are going to increase based upon the increase in office space. The let's go down to the rent, office rent. So we currently have 3,150 square feet here. at $1.96. The new space is a 73% increase, and that's going to be 5,462 square feet at $1.93 a square foot. The lease, the proposed lease gives the board the 2nd, 13th, and 25th months of free rent. And then there will be a 3% increase per annum. So that's what these numbers are based on, is the proposed lease that has been discussed for the new office space. So a lot of these increases that you'll see are, for some of the expenses, are based upon the increase in office space, the increase in staffing. And the increase in records stored, tape stored, is based upon the fact that we'll be storing more documents over at the warehouse instead of in the offices. We have telephone, staff travel. These are for Reno board meetings, continuing education, FARC conference. That's the increase in that line item, and Jeff can tell you a little bit more about the FARC conference if anybody's interested in talking about that. The next couple items are really are fixed fees. They are based upon contracts. All three of the items under professional fees are fixed contracts and fixed fees. We have had some small increases in...
Can I interrupt you for a minute? I'm sorry. Just a quick question. I know that we're looking at, we're moving, et cetera. Deb or any of you guys, have you guys looked into seeing if there's a way to use digital, disperse information or whatever with more digitally rather than paper? Just curious if y'all would, is that a possibility?
Yes, so anything pertaining to a licensee, as far as their application file, or if they change their address, or a hygienist changes her name, or anything that's of a personal matter or related to their license, all of those documents are already scanned, and then we house them for 6 months just to make sure that everything transferred over and it's secure and it's on our server. And then after that, we can go ahead and we destroy those documents because they've been scanned in, and those now become the original per se. Where we don't, so we already do that. Where we don't scan is the investigation files. So because we have to hold complaints for 10 years. So any investigation or any complaint file, we have to maintain that for 10 years. So, I mean, eventually I'm hoping that we can go digitally with that, but it would be very expensive for us to do that for the investigation files because they're so large. So right now, the only documents that are not scanned in are anything pertaining to an investigation or a complaint.
All right, I just curious.
I think eventually we'll be able to, but right now, I think it would be very expensive.
Okay, moving on. We have employee wages and benefits, and under this section, you'll see that there are the positions, employment positions listed out individually. And there is a proposal for a 2.85% cost of living increase for staff. That proposal is also retroactive to July 1st, the beginning of this fiscal year. And it also, we also have some new positions that we have budgeted for as well.
And so we have a legal assistant that is actually moving a current staff into that position and hiring a new person to replace them. A deputy general counsel, the receptionist would be our current staff moving into the other position, and then that one becoming a new person, and then a part-time investigator. Are there any questions on these proposed budget items?
Yes, I do. If no other board member have any questions on these?
No.
No?
They said no.
Oh, okay, good. Let's see. How did these new positions get put on our agenda?
You mean on the proposed budget?
Yes.
So, well, if you remember, there's some changes that were recommended through the last audit. So taking those recommendations into account, obviously maximizing the resources of the board. It has been discussed and brought up in the past about having a in-house investigator in lieu of the disciplinary screening officers. So when we looked
Not
at...
at the board, right? The board didn't discuss that, or did the board discuss that?
You did when you were discussing the recommendations of the audit? So some of these are based on the recommendations that was made in the last audit about contracting with DSOs versus...
Yes.
So in lieu of having disciplinary screening officers under contract, or it was also mentioned of hiring a investigator, just having just like an investigator investigate for the board. So in looking at the cost to put the DSOs on contracts versus hiring a part-time investigator, you would be maximizing
That was not discussed at a board meeting that I was attended. I apologize.
Oh, okay, yes, because even Dr. Lee was the one who brought it up.
And Dr. Lee and Ms. Chofie have both,
I'm sorry?
Dr. Lee and Ms. Chofie have both discussed that during board meetings as requesting that we look into that, that possibility. And again, this is just allotting for that. The specific positions will be on the next board meeting agenda. But again, this is just to allot for those positions in the budget.
Right. It doesn't mean you have to fill them, and it just...
I don't believe those positions were voted on.
No, they're scheduled for
There
the...
might have been discussion on it.
No, so, well, there was a discussion on it and per the recommendations of the audit, but they are on the next meeting to be approved. But we also wanted to approve the budget at the next meeting. That's why this is just a proposed budget.
Right. We can't fill a position that we haven't
Budgeted
budgeted for. So we have to budget for it, and then the board can vote whether or not to fill it.
And we can't have a position that we don't have a NAC regulation for either. So we don't have that for an investigator.
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. Actually, it's the statute. So under NRS 631.190, the board appoints all the agents, employees, attorneys, investigators, professional consultants. So the statutes actually gives you the authority, and you define their duties. So it's in the statute. You're correct, it's not a reg. But that doesn't mean that once you hire an employee investigator, we can't make a reg that defines their duties. But currently you have the authority under the statute.
the board, the audit said that we were lacking in oversight, right? And specifically, it says the board oversight is lacking for the creation of vision, information of board rules of practice, etc. It discusses that anything that has to do with patients, the possibility of having patients, affected with dentists and that sort of thing, has to be an NAC regulation. And so, clearly, we need to have the discussion and, that we have to have an agreement on what this position is going to be, what it involves, etc., before we authorize a budget and before we create the position. So we're putting the cart before the horse.
No, well, yes and no. So when you're doing a proposed budget, that's all it is you're just proposing that you're allocating this amount. When you go and bring your recommendations to the board about the budget, at that same meeting, you're going to address these positions. If the board elects not to approve the positions, then we would eliminate that line item from the budget. But we're projecting what
You're creating a position that the board has not looked at, discussed, and or voted on.
No, we're budgeting for a
Position.
position. We're not creating a position.
Well,
You're budgeting for a position. You can't create a position that you don't have a budget for. You have to have a budget and
explain to
then,
me how that okay, great. Explain to me how that we have on our website a very specific position that we're hiring for.
works.
It says position investigator, position status.
correct, we're advertising for that position. We haven't hired anybody because you have to do that.
That's my entire point, folks.
But if you don't approve the
position that the board has not even discussed, and look at this, they have to be no later than September 18th, 2019, that was several days ago.
Correct, so
So that
if
you can consider them.
okay, so the way,
I specifically know who put this position
I did,
on the website.
I did.
Okay, who's I did?
I did, Deborah, I did. As I have for 5-6 years that I've been doing this. It doesn't mean you have to hire somebody, it doesn't mean you have to approve the position. But if you're going to comply with the recommendations, it's either I have to get contracts for 28 DSOs together, because I have to have a plan to the interim finance by October 18th. If I don't get things in line to say this is what we're proposing to do, or we can go this route, I have to have a plan because I have to report back to them on October 18th. So I'm trying to get a plan together. Now, it doesn't mean by the time the actual meeting is before the governor, you guys will have decided what the plan is. But I have to give you something so you know what your options are. And I have to, we can't just go, okay, let's wait for a board meeting and people's complaints just pile up. In order to keep the workflow going and in order to keep the investigations going, I have to start planning ahead so that if you elect to go with a employee investigator, I have to then notify the DSOs that we're not utilizing them. They need to send their files back. I need to get those ready for the investigator. This isn't just, oh, okay, well, let's just decide. I'm making plans so that you guys have the information to make an informed decision. So we posted those positions so that you knew what the job will be, and these are the applicants that are seeking, and these are the people you can consider. If you say we're not going to hire those people, then I would send a letter to those people who applied and say the board has elected not to go this route. Thank you for your application.
I don't understand how this is increasing board oversight. I thought that was the whole issue with our audit. Is that we-
The board oversight,
Or
doctor,
something.
is if I went,
Things are
no,
happening.
okay. The board oversight is if I went and hired these people without telling you, that is board oversight. I'm collecting all the information to bring to the board because you have to approve that. I'm well aware of what the board's responsibilities are and where my limitations are, but how can you make an informed decision if I don't give you the information? If I don't budget for those positions? If I don't tell you what those positions entail? If I don't bring you applications and applicants interested? How can you make an informed, how do I bring something to the board? And what, I just put it on the agenda and we sit here for 4 hours talking about it? I'm trying to eliminate that. You're very busy, you have a dental practice. We have things going on here. I'm trying to be efficient so that when matters are brought before you, you have the information to make an informed decision. And whatever your decision is the final decision. I haven't made any decision other than to collect the information you need to make that decision.
Dr. Moore, this is Ms. Bethea. I just need to look at the recommendations of the budget to move forward. This is just a recommendation, and then Mrs. Humble will put it all together, and then it goes before the board for approval. So this particular Budget and Finance Committee today is just a recommendation about the budget.
It's about a budget item, a couple of budget items that were not discussed nor brought through to the board to discuss. We've been under investigation and an audit's been put out.
Okay, but-
to have more board oversight. And if you don't want my opinion on things, then don't invite me to the meetings and don't put me on the committee. So,
No, I'm just trying to explain to you how this comes about. So that when it comes.
I'm saying that it came about with people that aren't on the board. That's what it sounds like. And I'm sorry, I don't see how that is board oversight.
Okay,
We're talking about creating a new position. We're talking about.
Okay, we can't talk about it until we talk about it. So we're putting it on here. You can talk about it. If you don't want to approve that portion of the budget, then vote no. That is your right as a board member and a committee member, okay? But we can't talk about it until we talk about it. We are talking about it. It will be on the board meeting, on the full board meeting. It's simply allotting a budget item for that expense. If the expense comes to be, it's been allotted. If it doesn't, because the board votes otherwise, then we take it off of the budget. You're not making a decision today. Deb has made no decision prior to today. We can't just continue to talk about things without taking action, and we are giving you the tools with which to take action, one way or the other. If you want to approve these positions at the next board meeting, you do so. If you don't, you don't do so. But we can't wait till the next board meeting to discuss it, and then there's nothing to approve because we haven't given you the tools with which to approve it. That's all that's happening here. Nobody's making any decisions today. Nobody has created a position. Nobody has hired anybody. Nobody has said this has to be spent on that position. So again, like Deb said, she's simply giving the board the tools with which to make their decision. So, and again, nobody is forcing you to agree with this. This is simply a meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee so that you have the information that will be presented to the board to make suggestions as you've done, and some of the things will be modified and changed based on your suggestions. And if you wish to approve presenting this budget to the board, you can, and if you don't have to. But we're not here, the audit is not on the agenda, the budget is. And so this discussion of the audit, while we're happy to have it when it's on the agenda, we're not allowed to discuss in a meeting that has to be noticed, and the specific agenda items need to be noticed, we can't have discussion and deliberation about items that are not on the budget. Excuse me, on the agenda. So we're going a little far afield of our agenda, and that could be problematic. So I just want to caution you about that.
May I?
Yes.
Sanders here. I think there's some misunderstanding about the hiring processes of individuals in the state of Nevada. Before you can post or create a position, you have to identify in the application for any new position created as a state position the funding source. So the money and the identification of potential spending must be identified before any consideration of hiring can be done. That's very different than private sector when my office would hire somebody and then I talk to them about what I'm going to pay them. The state process is very cumbersome that way, and it's very dictatorial in the steps you must go through to do that. So I think some of the confusion may be the fact that understanding the identification of the funding source is the first thing you have to do in any consideration of a new position in the state of Nevada. That's quite different than the public sector, the private sector rather.
So what we could do is we'll let Stacy continue to go through, and when we're done, if there's anything on the budget that you don't want to be part of the recommendation, then we'll note that when we're done going through. Is that helpful?
Dr. Moore?
That's fine, no problem, thank you.
Okay, moving on through the rest of the employee wages and benefits, the additional expenses, service fees, tax expense, retirement fund, health insurance, that's all based upon the gross wages of all of the proposed, current and proposed positions. The Board of Directors expenses, we budget those out based upon the number of meetings, and, excuse me, and we do project out an increase in the number of meetings for this next few months, and so we have increased our budget because of that. The anesthesia evaluating committee, we have set in the budget 2 calibration sessions, and those are about approximately $5,000 each, and a calibration video expense. The video expense actually would benefit any of the evaluators in the future to have that.
And I just want to note on that, because of the changes that we made to the anesthesia regulations with the addition of the pediatric moderate sedation permit now, and the additional emergency drugs for patients 12 years of age and equipment, we're going to have to redo our emergency scenarios, which is what's going to be discussed at the upcoming anesthesia subcommittee meeting. And then they'll talk about conducting and drafting up a new calibration, because we need to update the calibration we have to reflect the changes that we made recently to the regulations. So that's why you see the video expense. We probably about 5 years ago did the same thing, but with the changes we need to do a new video for calibrating those members or agents.
Okay, under investigations and complaints, there's a couple of new items in here, and I will have Deb explain those items to you. The other adjustments or increases that we're seeing are in the review panel expenses, and that's because of an increase in the number of meetings, which also increases the travel expenses for the review panel.
There's no change in our legal fees for investigations. We're staying with the same, pretty much actual of what we had for this past fiscal year. The DSO calibration expense, depending on what happens with positions, we may end up having to fund that. And then we have what we call miscellaneous investigation expenses, and those have to do with court reporters, process service, anything that isn't picked up in the line items above. The new items on here, expert witness fees, and the investigator exam room rent, those are items that Deb can address for you.
You want me to address them?
I know what it is.
So if the board were to move forward with a part-time investigator, as you know currently right now, our disciplinary screening officers, when they're assigned a case, if they need to evaluate the patient, they do that at their office at no charge to the patient. With a part-time investigator, obviously we're looking for someone who is a dentist and who is retired. So obviously that person would not have and would work out of the board office and would not have his or her own private office. So the investigator exam room rent would be I've reached out to CSN, and they are addressing it with the administration there, but they would be willing to rent basically an operatory to the board that the investigator could utilize twice a month to schedule patients, and then the investigator would go over to CSN in the dental hygiene clinic and utilize the operatories there. And so basically we would just pay a rent fee for that operatory and to utilize their radiation machines and their instruments. And then if he or she would need to do an evaluation, that would be that expense. If that's the route the board goes. But I wanted to make sure that I noted all of the things that we would need to do in order to have a in-house investigator be able to evaluate patients. As far as witness fees, if the investigator is a part-time dentist and we get cases where it's against a specialist, and if the investigator dentist is not a specialist and it's a general, then we may need to seek an expert opinion for those who are specialists regarding the care they delivered. So it's just in case that happens, we've allotted funds for that.
Okay, going down to infection control inspections. So we're projecting to take this in-house. And so the reduction in those expenses is based upon taking it in-house in March of next year, after pretty much about the time that we're moving offices. And so we do have a staff member that would be handling that. And that's the last section of line items on the budget. Are there any questions on any of this?
So are there any particular items, Dr. Moore, that you do not want to make or you want to discuss regarding whether or not you want to recommend those as part of the budget?
Well, it sure sounds like a position was discussed. There's quite a bit of detail about it that somebody just gave. I don't know who that was. And I don't see how that is having more board oversight. That sounds like things are happening beyond the board, discussing this position creating this position. I don't know what you're calling it. It's very clear on your, on the advertising, whoever put it out, that it is a position. And you're budgeting, you're wanting to budget for something that we haven't even discussed. Dr. Sanders says that, quote, that's the way the government works. I can't speak yes or no to that. I don't never work for the government, so I don't have any rebuttal for that. I don't know how that all works.
Well, if it's something you're concerned about, you can always make a motion regarding whether or not it's included on the budget. It would be for the committee to vote on as to whether it would be included in the committee's recommendations to the full board. And again, you're not making any final decisions today other than what is going to be, what the committee is going to recommend to the board. So, you know, if
Well, just for the record, what I'm understanding from Dr. Sanders, Ms. Bethea, and from whoever else is in the boardroom is that we have to have a budget for a position that we haven't discussed nor voted on. Am I hearing that correctly?
The potential for a position. Without going too far into the details of the audit, if the auditors want the disciplinary screening officers to become independent contractors, that's 28 contracts, okay? Now the question is can a dentist be an independent contractor as an investigator without holding a license with the Private Investigators Board? So some issues came up when they made those recommendations that I'm not quite sure the board can enter into contracts with independent contractors. And I'm not an attorney. As an option, when this is all being brought up at the next meeting, that's when all of this will be discussed, the positions, why the need for the position, what the concerns are keeping it as independent contractors, and what is the best cost maximizing the board's resources. So although you are making a recommendation to the board is not bound by this recommendation. The board, this budget could get to the board and they could totally change this entire budget. This is just that you reviewed it and you understand and you're recommending that this move to the board, and then you'll have an opportunity along with all the other board members to review this again. And they don't, it's just a recommendation. The board doesn't have to accept your recommendation. You can change your mind. You can say yes today and go before the board and hear more information when it's more detailed and say, I don't agree with that. So this is just a recommendation. This doesn't bound the board to anything.
And the other thing is that while there hasn't been a vote specific to these positions, which will be on for the next agenda, Deb has been asked by a number of board members to look into the possibility of an in-house investigator. And that's all she has done, is she's looked into it and she's giving you the information on whether to determine if that is a viable or if that's a path that the board wants to take. So it's, you know, we only have board meetings every so often, and things have to be done in between the board meetings to prepare you at the board meetings to make the decision. It's not that we're making no one is making decisions in between the board meetings. We're merely gathering the information so that the board can make the decisions. Because if we wait and discuss and then do the information and then wait and then vote and then wait, and I mean, it's going to be 2 years from now before anything gets done. So we need to give you the tools to make the decisions that the board is going to make, one way or the other. And that's not something that any of us have a say in unless we sit on the board.
So Do we have a motion for the recommendation to the board regarding the fiscal year 20 draft proposed budget?
I would make a motion that we accept the proposed budget and send it forward to the full board for consideration and approval.
Are you still there, Dr. Moore?
Yes. I can't recommend something that I don't agree with, folks, but I can make a proposal that we send the proposal to the board that we need to discuss adding a position, etc., and then the board can discuss it, or we can have a committee to create what the positions would be. But it's my opinion that there have been some positions that have been created unbeknownst to the board, which is not board oversight, and that you're budgeting for them, and in case quote, all the other things that you're saying. So,
And Dr. Moore, I appreciate, I'm sorry, I do appreciate that that's your belief, but I'm telling you that no position has been created. And I just want to make that very clear, because there's a lot of people viewing this meeting, and I want to make it very clear that there has been no position created, okay? We're gathering the information that board members have asked us to gather, have asked Deb to gather, and that is what's being presented. You don't have to approve this budget. We're not approving the budget today. You don't have to recommend it to the board, but you know, that I want to be very clear that there has been no position that has been created that is absolutely going to occur unless and until the board approves it.
Do you want to
So-
amend the motion
Yeah.
that we take out the 3 positions? So what you can do is Dr. Sanders can amend his motion that you approve the proposed budget. You make a recommendation to the board of the proposed budget with the redaction of the 3 positions.
Do we have a motion for that, Dr. Moore?
I will second that motion that we do not have the new
Well,
position.
no, there hasn't been a motion. Is that the motion you
I
want
would
to?
Yes,
accept
it
that
is.
as an amendment to the motion, that we redact those out as a separate element to be discussed.
Okay, so I'm going to just make it so to clear what the motion is. So the motion is to make a recommendation to the full board regarding the fiscal year 20 draft proposed budget with the elimination of the 3 new positions and any costs associated with those positions.
I can second that.
Okay. Okay, second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Public comment. This public comment period is for any matter that is within the jurisdiction of the public body. No action may be taken upon the matter raised during public comment unless the matter itself has been specifically included on the agenda as an action item. The chairperson of the board will impose a time limit of 3 minutes. The chairperson may allow additional time at his or her discretion. Is there any public comment? There's no one up north,
Yeah, and I didn't hear anybody add to the phone.
and there's no one on the phone. Any public comment down? Okay. So we are going to adjourn the meeting.
Motion?
Motion to adjourn. Dr. Moore?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you want to second the motion to adjourn?
Yes, I second the motion to adjourn.
Okay.
All
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
This meeting has been adjourned. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so if you can get
Me too.
we'll reject those and any costs.